Hi, guys. Welcome to the show today. I really appreciate this. This is going to be a special edition. This is uh, basically to give you a little bit of understanding about what our backgrounds are. So, when we're telling you all this stuff about banking and finance and all of those other things, we want you to understand that we actually know what we're talking about a little bit. So I thought it'd be a good idea for us to kind of talk to each other a little bit. I'm going to give you guys a little bit of peek into what Adam's all about, where his background is, what makes him unique, why he really knows what he's talking about. I mean, he's been a great partner for me. I've worked with him for years, and I'm really excited for you guys to kind of get to know him a little bit better. Um, we're gonna kind of link this to most of our videos so that if you guys are interested in hearing more about us, you'll be able to watch this video and we don't actually have to go into the redundancy of putting that type of information in all the other videos.
Yeah.
So
I don't like talking about myself more than one time.
I know, but I'm very good at I'm very good at doing interviews, so I'm going to make this guy open up a little bit and tell you all about himself.
I'm like an onion, baby.
Well, Adam, kind of let's get to that point then. Tell me a little bit about yourself. I know you're originally from the Midwest.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about how you grew up and kind of what kind of interests you had as you were growing up as a kid.
No, I had a very typical Midwest upbringing. I mean, Bassem and I, right now we live in Houston, but I'm born and raised in Wisconsin, Milwaukee specifically. So good old southeastern Wisconsin shout out there. Grew up with a typical Midwest upbringing. It's very, very just kind of down to earth, hearty, roll up your sleeves, work, type of, I don't want to call it a farm community, but very, rural in some senses, where 2 feet of snow don't stop us. We're going to go to school, we're going to go to work, and we're going to get it done. I have a very deep appreciation for what my parents have done in terms of, where I was raised and how I was raised more specifically. But ultimately at the end of the day, that's how I grew up. One of the things I can't stand, my wife as well, is cold. So Wisconsin, not where you want to be. We moved down to Houston about 5.5 years ago. From a career standpoint, obviously, but also the weather is a lot nicer down here. So that's how I grew up. I went to a private Catholic school in my early years before I transitioned to high school. But I did all my education in Wisconsin, and that includes my graduate degree and undergraduate degree, all in Wisconsin. That's where I met my wife in college.
Awesome. Since you mentioned it, tell us a little bit about kind of your education background and what you studied, things like that.
Right. So I have my bachelor's in finance and then my master's in business, my general MBA. For me, I've always had an affinity and an understanding for the numbers side of things, be it business, economics, finance. That's just what I gravitated towards, even from an early age. To me, on a couple fronts, I like numbers, I like math, I like finance, because everything is generally pretty binary. It's pretty black and white. It is or it isn't, and that has always spoken to me. It's resonated with me. When it came to math, economics, you name it, it was like a second language to me, and I just understood it and could speak it. But my family is not business. My family is all science. My father is a research professor. My mother, before she retired, was a chemist. My sister's a pediatrician, and my brother's a pharmacist. So I am literally the black sheep of the family that, when it came from college time, my parents, I should say, not just my dad, but they gave me carte blanche. They're like, do what makes you happy. Do what you want to do. You don't have to go into science, because we are all in science. And I always appreciated that. My dad never gave me a hard time, because he knew I can forge my own path and I can do my own thing. I'm very independent. And so he was very supportive of me going to the School of Business, Finance in particular, for my undergraduate and then my graduate degree as well. He's always been very supportive. That's why I chose the path I did.
Well, that sounds pretty cool. I mean, my father's an immigrant as well, and he's kind of the opposite. If you're not a doctor, pretty much worthless.
Yeah, no, I know that's 100%. Like, my dad's just happy I'm successful. He wants to make sure I'm okay.
Yeah, no, I'm just kidding. But hey, tell me a little bit about how you actually got into banking, how you got into finance, kind of what your first role was, and a little bit about how you got started.
Yeah, Yeah, so I gave you the background in terms of the education as it pertains to finance. Making that transition from education to job is where it always gets interesting because when you're coming out of college, you don't have a wealth of experience, right? Life is one big catch 22, is it not? You need the job to get the experience. You need the experience to get to the job. So what do you do coming right out of college? And I had a large bank that I worked for right out of college because it was one of the first institutions that would interview me, would talk to me, and so on and so forth. But I had a very entry level position coming out of college, and it was in treasury services essentially. And I work in physical securities. So a physical issuance of stocks, bonds, and so forth like that. Anytime there needed to be a movement of funds, I worked in that. And I really appreciated that job. I got a very first blush look into the world of banking and finance, but I soon graduated to the underwriting side of the house. And that's where my 17 years of experience in banking is very heavy in credit. I have a little treasury experience, but it's predominantly credit. And that's where I really found the love of my banking job, because it really spoke to the numbers of it. Anyone watching this video would know, like, you're underwriting, you're really doing a deep dive into the financial status, the financial health of a company, and applying some degree of know-how and risk to it. And that's really where I fell in love with underwriting. And when it comes to underwriting, I've seen and I've done everything. I've looked at every industry. I know how a lot of industries operate, some of the pros and cons, businesses with seasonality, with cyclicality, and how a bank views that in terms of the underwriting practices and so on and so forth. So I've had a lot of strategic conversations, financial conversations with a lot of clients in a lot of industries. That serves me very well in my current role as a relationship manager, somebody that actually takes care of a book of business, prospects new clients, takes care of existing clients. Because in our space, Bassem and I, is both as full-fledged bankers, having a very staunch credit background serves you well, because that is some of the more difficult conversations to have from a strategy standpoint, from a deep dive standpoint. It's something I'm very familiar with and very able to do. And so, yeah, in my 17 some odd years, I have 15, 14, 15 in credit, and I love it.
So tell me a little bit about, the size of deals you've worked on. I know you worked in multiple different industries and you've done every type of deal, but give people a little bit of a understanding of the breadth of the types of deals you've done, the size, scale, different, a little bit about that.
Right. No, that's a good question. I think what I've always done is I've stayed in the meat of lending. And what I mean by the meat of it is, you picture lending as kind of like a bell curve, right? You have real small business on one end of the spectrum and corporate finance on the other, right? Where, yes, there's businesses that fall within that, but the tip of the bell curve is really the meat of what we consider small to medium-sized businesses. And so over the course of my career, I'm talking about businesses that I've personally worked with. We'll call it top line revenues of starting at 5 to 10 million, all the way to 150 million. So that's a pretty wide breadth. It's a very wide spray of companies and degrees of revenues and profitability that I've worked on. And then you look at deal size. I've worked on deals that are as small as $500,000, $1 million, all the way up to 40, $50 million. And when I say 40, 50, we're talking of fundings, of bank lending, and all the differences that entails. Oddly enough, you would think a $500,000 deal versus a $40 million deal, time-wise, would be exponentially different. But that's what, comes with my years of experience, is you can spend every bit as much time on a $500,000 deal than you can 40. Obviously, I'm speaking somewhat in hyperbole, but not too much. Just
especially when the statements aren't really well prepared. You got to figure out what everything means.
We'll talk about that absolutely in the podcast, where that plays a big factor.
Oh, great. Tell us a little bit about your personal life, man. Tell me something that I don't know. I know you pretty well. Tell me something that I don't know about Adam. I want to find out something brand new for the first time right here in
Right.
front of our
Well,
audience.
I gotta keep some cards close to the vest. I'll tell you one thing I don't think you know about me, and
Okay.
I'll let everybody in on this because I don't mind telling this
Okay.
weird thing about myself. I have a fear, like a legit fear of birds. And I don't know
Oh
if I've
man.
ever told you that. I can't stand birds. I don't like them. Which always, it's always entertaining to me when people are like, "Oh yeah, I have a bird feeder in the back of my yard." I'm like, that's the last thing I'd have in my backyard.
So
I don't like them. They spread diseases and
no quail hunting for you?
no duck hunting, no none of that, no bird watching. That's
That's
not
really crazy.
up my alley. That's a little known fact about me.
So another thing I know you're real passionate about is kind of like health and fitness. Tell us a little bit about what you kind of do on your free time outside of
Yeah,
finance and banking, as far as that goes.
right. Banking's my day job and whatnot, but I'm always about constant improvement, be it mental or physical improvement, and diet and nutrition have always been top of mind to me. This is not something that I've taken on over the last couple years. It's really something I've lived for over 20 years, and that is I'm very cautious and cognizant of what I eat, and then also what I do with my body from a fitness standpoint. I really do. I find it important both for the mental side of things and the physical side of things. So I spend a lot of time. And the thing is, I'm constantly learning too. Just because I've done it for 20 years doesn't mean I know everything. I'm very humble when it comes to
Yeah.
that. Like I want to learn more. I'm constantly reading and changing and adjusting as it pertains to the diet, because diet is 70% of the battle. And
Yeah.
then also in the gym as well, especially in my old age, I've had to adjust how I work out and what I do. But that's something I'm very passionate about, and I
Well,
love doing what
I
I do.
hope I hope as we go forward, like in the different podcasts, you kind of share some of those tips with us, because what I
Absolutely.
found, and not as good at this as you are, but what I found is when you take care of yourself physically, you tend to make better decisions, clearer thoughts. You're a little bit more confident in your decisions, and so I think it's definitely something that's important. And we'd love to kind of get more of your perspective on those types of things as we go forward.
Absolutely. Yeah.
You
And
know.
if anyone wants to know, I'm an open book. I can talk about two things in depth. I can talk about finances and diet and nutrition. You will not get me to shut up if it's those topics. So
Yeah.
I can talk ad nauseum. But you know what, Bassem? I think it's enough about me. Right.
Man,
So
I was going to see if we could fill the hour just talking about you, man. I was
yeah,
doing pretty
no.
good.
I don't want to talk about me. Let's flip the script a little bit, and let's let the viewers know a little bit about Besim Tafilaj. And very similarly, let's talk about how you grew up, where you grew up, and what ultimately ended in kind of where you're at and why you're here.
Yeah, I mean, I grew up here in Houston, Texas. So I spent most of my life in Texas. My dad's an immigrant, and my mom's, from the Midwest, same area, kind of where you're from. And being that I had that type of a background, it was kind of interesting, because my parents really pushed academics very hard when I was growing up.
Right.
But I also really enjoyed sports. So I played sports nonstop in the backyard, and then studied pretty hard. And so my father, he really pushed me to go into the medical field. So as I went to college, went to University of Texas at Austin, hook 'em horns. As I grew up, I actually studied biology. It was my first kind of thing. And my plans growing up were actually I wanted to be in the NBA, but I also wanted to be a doctor. Oh, well, I didn't necessarily want to be a doctor, but that's
Yeah,
what
no,
the family
I know
wanted
that.
from me. But in the back of my mind, I've always had like this interest in finance and sports. I mean, finance and sports and finance. And I always thought, I watched a lot of those movies growing up, like Wall Street and things like that. And I always wanted to be a stockbroker. I thought that was really cool. I didn't
Same.
even,
Actually, that was one of my first things. Like,
uh,
I'll trade on the floor,
I
right?
didn't even really know what they did, but it just looked so cool, And like as I
Chaos.
got older, I took more interest in it. But yeah, I mean, actually, so kind of like growing up, I just assumed I was going to be a doctor, because I was pushed into science and math and that type of thing. And I actually went, like I said, I did biology, undergraduate degree. But while I was in college, I did what's called the business foundations degree at the Red McComb School of Business at UT, and that was kind of like a shift for me. So basically, that is more than a minor, but less than a major in general business. It's intended for people of other majors to get a foundation in business so that they can actually go out and start their own businesses. So I took that program, and I really liked it. I really liked everything I was learning, and I knew in the back of my head at some point I wanted to do business and finance.
Mhm.
Like I said before, I had a lot of passion in basketball, and so my my
You
initial
played a
thing,
lot of basketball. Why don't you tell
yeah.
people about that?
So
Because I
actually,
think
right out
people
of
don't know just how good you are at basketball.
well, I used to be good. I'm getting up there now, so it's not as good. But actually, right after college, I had an opportunity to go to Europe and play basketball professionally. So I
Mhm.
actually spent about 5 years playing basketball in Europe professionally after college. And so instead of going to medical school, taking the MCAT right away, I actually decided to go play basketball in Europe because I figured I can only do this once. I only live once.
Right.
I can only do this while I'm young. I don't have any responsibility. Boom, I'm gone. So I went to Europe. I lived there for about 5 years, playing mostly in like former Yugoslavia, but I was in Romania and Eastern Europe and different parts. And I had a great time. I met my wife there. Had a really good experience. But whenever we got pregnant with my first son, we decided that the basketball lifestyle probably wasn't going to be good for the family, you know? And so we decided to come back to the United States and kind of put down roots. And so when I first got back to the United States, I started talking to a lot of my friends and started talking to them about what they were doing, you know. And one of my best friends, who was also a microbiology major, by the way, he had started in commercial banking on the treasury side. So basically, what he was doing is he was advising these middle market companies on how to manage all the cash that was coming in, manage all the information that was coming in, uh, make their working capital cycles smaller, and leverage bank technology to create cash flow in the business, so to speak. And so, man, when he was telling me about this, I was like, man, this sounds awesome, you know? And he's like, the best part is you don't need to have a very strong background in finance because you're not doing like credit, you're not lending. It's more about, you know, creating these efficiencies. And so if you can think like that, it might be a good role for you. So I said, hey, I'm in. Can you get me an interview, something, you know?
That's how
Just
you started in banking, yeah?
yes, just give me a crack in the door.
Right.
So there was a opportunity that opened up in Austin, Texas,
Mhm.
and since I had gone to UT there, I was really I loved that town and I wanted to get back. And I actually applied for a job in Austin. Well, there was another gentleman that applied at the same time, and that gentleman uh, had more of a background in finance, more of a background in banking, and they said basically, look, we're going to offer him this job, but we are building out the Chicago market right now. If you're willing to go to Chicago, we'll give you an opportunity in Chicago because we don't have the volume we have down here up there yet. And we think that'll be a good starting point for you. We can teach you what you need to know and we can get you started. I was like, done, I'm gone. So I went over to, we started actually in banking in Chicago back in like 2006. Okay. And I was on the treasury side. I worked there for a little while. I was focusing on companies kind of in that 10 to 50, $60 million range, helping them with all kinds of different things. And eventually an opportunity opened up back down in Houston. Well, when that opportunity in Houston opened back up, I had already kind of got some experience now, knew what I was talking about. So I came down back, I moved back down to Houston, was able to kind of go into a similar role in treasury with a little bit more responsibility, with a more seasoned team. There was a lot more volume. I was involved in a lot more transactions.
That's a
And
big difference.
I did that role for a few years.
Mhm.
Well, as I got into the bank, I realized that I really enjoyed credit, relationship management, but that I had this little gap in knowledge. And so the bank that I was working at the time had an amazing training program that they were hiring people mostly out of undergrad, but you know, also some experienced people and putting them in an intensive, basically almost 2 year training program in credit. And they would be working with companies up to $2 billion in revenue, working on pretty large transactions and whatnot. And so I raised my hand and said, hey, that's what I want to do, you know? And so I moved over to the credit side on in the commercial space, working with, like I said, companies up to about 2 billion in revenues. I did like that intensive training. I was going to our corporate headquarters, doing trading for months there, coming back, working in the field, working on live deals. It was a really great experience. Meanwhile, I decided also to go back and further my education knowledge from a from an education standpoint. So I went back and got my MBA. I actually went to
Good Kellogg,
Northwestern.
right?
Yeah, I went to Northwestern University Kellogg's School of Management and got an MBA in finance and finance and business strategy is kind of what my focuses were. And that opened my mind to all kinds of other stuff too, you know.
Right.
And it was funny because when I first went in there, people were just assuming since I was banking, I had all this background in finance, but I actually didn't. But the good thing was that the math background that I had and the quantitative background that I had from science really helped me in that. And I did really well in school there. And then after I finished my MBA, or kind of when I was finishing my wrapping it up, I decided to leave banking completely, and I went to help run a family business.
Right.
So
Which is impressive because, a lot of us as relationship managers, we talk about helping businesses, but we've never had our hands in a business. We only know things,
yeah,
high level and whatnot. You had your hands actually in a business, running a business, a large business at
yeah.
that gives you actual insider. Talk about that for a second. That's interesting.
Yeah. So basically, this was a business well, there were two businesses, one that was started by my father and the one that I ended up starting myself as well. And basically what we did is we took petrochemical and refinery byproducts from all over the world. Like our biggest customers were all in the Middle East.
Mhm.
And we would take their refinery byproducts, we'd bring them to the United States and sell them into other industries. So for example, one of our biggest products was sulfidic caustics, and they were spent sulfidic caustics. So through the refining process of natural gas and oil and things like that, you pull out a lot of sulfur. You use caustic to pull out sulfur
Right.
from that, and it becomes basically like a hazardous waste. So we found this technology and way to manage that, where we found other uses for that in the United States. So we would sell it to the paper mill industry. They would use that to break down the lignin in wood. They would use it in their boilers to kind of neutralize acidic rain, but not rain, but acidic water that would be coming in, because they have these jets that spray out water, and when it mixes with their ash, it creates an acidic thing, and then this would kind of neutralize that. So we're doing this kind of stuff, but it was an amazing experience because I came in, my dad was kind of taking over a distressed company. I came in, I kind of had to work that out. I did a lot of trade finance where we were bringing letters of credit, doing all kinds of stuff internationally, bringing chemicals in. I learned a lot about logistics and transportation. We were bringing in chemical parcel shipments from all over the world. We were managing barges, trucks, rail cars. So I learned a lot about firsthand about operations, about cash flow, about how to manage a business, what everything means. And it was an amazing experience. But I did that for about three and a half years. And, basically it was a family business. And I just felt like the tension that was always in the business was
Yeah.
carrying over to the personal life. And so I
Yeah.
said, to me personally, it wasn't worth it. I
Yeah.
didn't want to have stress at home and stress at work
Sure.
related to the same thing. And I just felt like so many of our conversations at home just ended up being about work.
Yeah.
And so I
Well,
decided, you know what, I really like banking. I'm going to go back.
right.
And when I went back, I actually went back to one of the largest banks in the United States, and worked in relationship management there. I kind of focused on the smaller end of the market, which is, that $5 to $50 million range,
Mhm.
and had a great experience. I love working with those companies because there's so much going on with them. They're growing and they don't have all the knowledge yet. So they really, really rely on what you're telling them, and
I
you can make
agree with that.
huge
Yeah.
impacts. I've worked, like I said before, we worked with companies that are $2 billion in revenue. I'm working on some like $500 million deal that's like syndicated, and they're kind of dictating terms to you. They've got
Right.
MBAs and finance people, ex-bankers on their team. They know exactly what they're doing. They don't need my help. It's just like at that point, it becomes like, what can the bank do?
You're
How?
there purely to facilitate.
Yeah. And so I like staying in this space. I worked at that bank for a few years, had a great experience. I wasn't as excited about the culture there. So I basically decided, let me try a little bit smaller bank. I went to a regional bank, but it's still large, probably in about 10 states, you know, over $30 billion in assets. It was a good company. Had a great experience there too. Was calling on kind of similar companies. It worked on some different types of deals that the first bank didn't really like.
Right.
And then, so I got to see a lot of different things there, learned a lot about like oil and gas lending, because this particular
Yeah.
one was, they did a reserve-based oil and gas lending, did a lot more commercial real estate, pure investor deals. It was interesting to see that. And then, just happened to be that a friend of mine, his wife was vacating a role at the current bank that I'm at. And this is the same bank that I had started with in 2006. And so that bank had a lot of familiarity with me. And whenever that role got opened up, they called me and said, "Hey, we've got this role. Your friend is leaving. Is that something you'd be interested in?" And next thing you know, Adam Bosnjak is interviewing me.
That's right. Yeah.
And I'm
I
like, how
remember
does,
that lunch
oh
too. I
man, they're
remember
like,
that.
we just want to make sure our credit guys like you.
Exactly. It's like, I don't know, this guy's kind of
uh,
tall.
uh,
He's a little too tall.
Yeah, it's funny because like I actually knew probably like 70% of the team, and but they purposely had three people that I didn't really know at all,
Yeah.
kind of take me to lunch, kind of talk through everything because they wanted to see how it's going to fit with the new people. And yeah,
Yeah.
I really liked the energy I was seeing from these guys and their backgrounds, and I was like, yeah, this will be a good fit. So I've been there for the last 4 or 5 years, something like that, and it's been great. Been working on a lot of great deals. Similar to you, most of the deals that I'm working on are between that $1 million range. I think to like 50 million, kind of
Yep.
depending. But, I think our sweet spot right now is like that 5 to 10, $15 million range is really like where the bulk of our deals, or where we like to see the bulk of our deals.
Mhm.
But I've worked on huge deals, like I said, in syndications that are hundreds of millions of dollars. I've worked on probably the smallest deals I've worked on are maybe like 500 to $1 million,
Right. Yeah.
and done all kinds of stuff from investor real estate, owner occupied real estate, lines of credit, equipment finance, acquisition financing, SBA financing, pretty much name it.
Right.
And so it's been a great experience and I really enjoy it. One of the things I love the most about banking, and I think you kind of touched on it, is that you learn so much about so many different industries. And I
Yep.
like that variety because I get bored after a while with stuff. And so once I get bored with a certain industry, I'm already moving to the next company that needs something, and I get to learn all about that industry and take a little bit of a deep
Right.
dive. And my background in and running a business has been very helpful because I can talk to business owners a lot about how that is and things that I did and things that worked for me or didn't work for me or my experience. And so it's
Yeah.
been really great. And I'm excited now to kind of start sharing that knowledge on a broader level with more people.
Likewise, yeah. No,
Yeah.
you bring up very good points. Both Basim and I have worked for a number of different institutions, and I think where that's important is you
Yeah.
get a different taste for different things at different banks and
Yep.
different way of doing things. But ultimately, it boils down to the same thing: helping multiple industries achieve goals, especially growth. We love the relationship aspect of things. I don't relish being any sort of transactional banker where you
No.
take an order and you handle it. Anyone can do that. I'm not interested in that. I don't think either is Basim. Is we really want to create a relationship where it's strategic, it's advisory. We're helping you grow, and we've seen this. Basim and I have both seen this with a lot of banks or a lot of industries, excuse me, where we take them from point A to point B along the way, and then at some point in time they sell or
Yeah.
so on and so forth. It's very fulfilling,
Yeah.
and it's obviously very much appreciated on the other end of the spectrum. But yeah, we bring a lot of different experiences from a lot of
Definitely.
different institutions. But
Yeah, and I think it's what I think is really going to be interesting about this podcast in general is that we both have the educational background, so that's kind of more theory, but sometimes there's like nuances that happen in real life that people are
yeah,
not aware of, and we can kind of
exactly.
talk to that too. And we've seen it from different banks. So like you said, you've worked at multiple banks, I've worked at multiple banks, and we've seen how these particular things affect at different banks. And I think that it's going to really be eye-opening to a lot of people. And I think that some things they'll see that it's nothing personal about them. Maybe it's just they're
Right.
talking to the wrong institution. Some things it's going to be like this is carrying through across the industry.
Mhm.
And our goal here is really to help people grow their business and share some of the experience that we have. I mean, we kind of look, we're not these some zero type of people that think that, if you're being successful, you're taking success from somebody else. We believe we can grow the pie. And I think that by knowledge and sharing that knowledge, we're going to be able to do that a lot. And I'm excited about it,
Right.
and
And a lot of that is predicated on, I think banking is viewed very just black and white, like it's an in the box type product.
yeah.
But Sim and I bring, not to use the cliche, but yeah, it's very out of the box. And sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But our experience allows us well, this is typically what we see here, but there's a way to maneuver, this situation, this thing that you're
Yeah.
going through, this growth. It really is, and that's what the years of experience afford us, is that foresight and library of work that we have and experience. But those are great points. I do want to ask you, Basim. So you made me give a little known fact, and I gave the bird story. There
I'm not
with
scared of birds, bro.
yeah, I know. Well, most sane people are not afraid of birds. Okay, I fully
I'm just
it's a
kidding.
weird little bugaboo about me. But give us a fun fact about Basim we might not know.
Well, I'd say kind of because of my background and the things I've done with my life, I've had the fortune to probably travel to about 50 different countries all over the world. And so, I mean, I really, really enjoy traveling and seeing a lot of different things. It's probably one of the things that I enjoy the most out of life is learning about cultures, seeing different places. And it's actually been one of the things like in this COVID time that we are in right now that it's been the most difficult because I go all over the world pretty much every year. We take our entire
Right.
family.
Yeah, you do.
Yeah, my 3-year-old's been to like 14 different countries already, which is I know adults in their 50s and 60s that haven't been to 14
Sure.
countries, and so it's pretty amazing. But I'd say that we really like traveling. We like learning about people and their cultures and stuff. And I mean, kind of in the back of my mind, I would really like to visit every country in the world. I don't know if that's ever going to happen, but we'll
Of course
see. I
it will.
mean, we'll
Yeah.
see. I'm gonna have
I
to take
mean,
a I'll have to take a couple
let me
months
tell the
off.
viewers here. This guy has stayed in a legitimate castle. A castle that was converted into a hotel or some
Yeah, it was
derivative
actually pretty funny. We
thereof.
were we were talking about the other day. So last time we went to Ireland, there's these castles that have been converted to hotels, and so we had taken my son to a whole bunch of soccer matches, and he was super excited about that. So I said, "Hey, I
That
got to
was
do
World
something."
Cup time, was it not?
No, this is actually that was
I didn't know if
2019.
that
So
was
the
when
next
Croatia
year.
was in the finals. That's my.
Uh, yeah, that
I
Croatia,
throw that out there.
man. What happened to those guys in the final, man? I don't know,
They
but
played France. I think they were. I think they did well.
but yeah, when we went to this castle, I did something special for my daughter. Was I said, let's take her to a castle and make her feel like a princess. And it's so funny because I think like last week she was talking to her friends and she's like, "Oh, I stayed in this castle and this and that." And she comes home and she goes, "Dad, everyone thinks I'm lying when I tell them I stayed in a
Right.
castle."
Yeah.
I'm like,
Most people don't know that that's a thing.
I know. I was like, "Hey, we got pictures to prove it," But
I
yeah,
know.
it was
Yeah,
pretty
I was all like, dude, where are you staying? Hilton? And you're like, no, a castle. Fantastic.
Exactly.
No,
Yeah,
that's a
but
once in a lifetime
that's.
experience.
I mean, I don't know if that's probably something that I like to travel, but it's just something that I think
Yeah.
that
Well, I didn't know you wanted to hit every
I
country.
mean,
I think you
I would. And you know what I find kind of like most interesting is I like going to these countries that a lot of people don't travel to, like Eastern Europe's like I really like it over there, as well as I've been to a lot of countries in the Middle East and whatnot. So yeah, I mean, it's interesting. I mean, like we traveled to Russia, like you said, for the World Cup. That was a really interesting experience. Estonia, all over the place. It's been really really fun. And then I got to travel a lot while I was playing basketball as well. So I got to go to a lot of places and I got paid to go there and I got treated very well and I really enjoyed that as well. So, but yeah, I mean, it's been interesting.
That's cool. What just to kind of wrap it up and close here, like, what do you do? What's downtime like for Basim? What's kind of like either a guilty pleasure or just something you like to do to pass the time when we're not working?
Yeah, I mean, so I've got 3 kids. You got kids as well. They kind of dominate my time. I spend
Of course.
a lot of time with them, and
What's free
so
time? But is
yeah,
this
I
like a
mean,
made up word?
I know where is that free time? I mean, it's hard enough to get away to do these podcasts, But I spend a lot of time with my kids, and trying to get my son to play some sports, do some stuff like that. But I mean, really, the majority of my downtime is spent with the kids. I really like doing outdoor stuff if we're able to. Like this year, we spent a lot of time in the mountains in Colorado, hiking, those type of things. And then earlier in the year, like when the lockdowns first hit, I was doing like probably 6 to 10 mile hikes almost every day, and I would
Oh,
just like,
nice. I didn't
I
know
would
that.
put my headphones in and I'd be talking to people for
Yeah.
work and whatnot, but I'd be hiking basically all through the city. So I really like taking like those walks and doing physical activity. I love working out like you do, man. But it's so hard for me to get away. I need to make it more of a priority, but so maybe you'll rub off some of that good nutrition and
Yeah. No,
fitness
absolutely.
sense on me, but I got a long way to go on that. But I enjoy it when I do have the time, but it's rare.
Yeah, no, I get it.
Yeah,
It's tough to fit it in, but listen,
yeah,
you're the only person that's gonna stand in the way of getting it done. If you
yeah.
want to make time, there's always time to do it.
But yeah, I mean, I look forward to, I mean, I know you pretty well, but I look forward to through this process of like sharing stuff, like getting to know more about you, having the viewers hear more about you.
Oh, likewise.
I
Yeah.
think it's going to be really interesting. And I really feel that a lot of people are going to get a lot of benefit here. And one thing that I was thinking about in the back of my mind as well is that, this podcast is going to be, it's kind of serving an underserved market. And I think there's a lot of people that, like students, for example, that would be really interested in this space and they don't even know it exists. Like I didn't even know
Of course.
commercial banking, what it was
You don't
until,
know what you don't know,
yeah,
right?
because
That's life.
everybody hears about investment banking. Everybody hears about, like you said, like stockbroker. Everybody knows retail stuff. They know the personal side, but not very many people really think about the commercial
Well, it
banking
doesn't
side.
really get the glamour.
Yeah.
We don't get the Wall Street movies for
Yeah, I
commercial
know.
lending.
I know.
It's not to say it's not sexy. I mean, you and I
Oh
enjoy the
yeah.
heck out of it, but it's
I'm,
kind of the steak and potatoes. That just
yeah.
this is what fuels the machine. It's just not the sexy part.
Yep.
It's not when it gets all the talk. So
I
yeah.
mean, and if you think about it, like from a business owner's perspective, they actually talk to us way more often than investment bankers. Like we're the day to day investment
Oh
bankers
yeah.
will come in, do a transaction or a capital raise or something for them and they're out. We're like there on the day to day basis. So we're getting to know these companies intimately. We know how things affect people. And I really think it's a great space. And I'm hoping that, we'll get some good talent coming into this space over time, especially as people learn more. And I hope that this podcast helps fuel that a little bit.
Absolutely. And, obviously, Bassim's contact, my contact is always in the link. It's in the description. Feel free at any point in time to reach out to us, from a topic suggestion standpoint, from a knowledge standpoint, should you want to know anything or just want to email us, call us and have a discussion, feel free. We welcome it. We want as much feedback as we can, because as much as we want to make this podcast, we want to have input on what everybody wants to see, what they want to hear, and we're very open and welcome, and we accept that as much as we can get. So we
Yeah.
really do appreciate it.
Yeah, we're here for you. So if you have topic suggestions, make sure you send them to us. If you have just in general suggestions or questions, let us know. We'll try to address them as much as we can on air. And if we're seeing a lot of questions coming back on certain topics, we're gonna
Right.
try to cover them. And we've got an extensive network in the finance community, so we're going to be bringing on a lot of amazing guests. And some of those guys have very deep knowledge in specific areas, and so we're going to get them to share that with us. But
Right.
I hope we're here going to be a resource for you. And like Adam said, we're looking forward to doing this on a frequent basis. So thanks, Adam, for kind of
No, thanks,
getting
Bassem.
me to open up a little bit.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. You don't need to get me bird seed for Christmas. Just so you know.
I'm going to get you that movie Birds, Hitchcock movie.
Good, thanks.
All right, guys. Well, thanks a lot. Like we said, we'll talk to you soon, and keep watching.
All right, thanks, guys.
Take care.